Hi everyone, I am so excited for our video today, mainly because I have with me these very beautiful Kakishibuzome brushes from Koyudo. Now, as I've stated in my Tokyo haul vlog, which is the latest one, I'm going to put a link down in the description box. I actually received this from Koyudo and from Fude Beauty, so thank you so much Koyudo and Fude Beauty for sending these brushes my way. I truly appreciate it. Domo arigatou gozaimasu. So for my vlog today, we will just be talking about these wonderful brushes. And of course, I'm going to talk about them individually, and there'll be a demo on how I'm going to be using them. So I am hoping that this vlog is not going to be way too long, but just in case, I'm going to put timestamps on the description box so you can go and jump to whichever part of the video that you want to, either with comparisons or with the demo. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my camera over, and then let's start talking about these brushes one by one. The Koyudo Kakishibuzome brush set comes in its own Polonia box, as you guys can see here. Now it's actually very light, and it feels quite hardy, and it also, it's quite fragrant, which is actually great because I believe Polonia wood is used in Japan, to make cabinets, because I believe Polonia wood actually repels moths. So it's actually a very great box to store your very special brushes. Now it's actually a very nice, substantial box in terms of storage space, as you guys can see here. So you can store more than 5 brushes in this box. Now if we take a look at the front cover of the box here, we can see the kanji characters for Kumano Fude and Koyudo, and we can also see the Kumano Fude seal here. Now at the back of the box, you can see the labels of Koyudo here about this Kakishibuzome brush set. Now the other thing that this set came with is actually a brush pouch or a makeup pouch, as you guys can see here. So it has a very nice reflective gold color here. It's a very simple zipper pouch wherein you can actually store not only your brushes but other makeup products as well. And we have the Koyudo label here on the side. Now the Kakishibuzome is a set of 5 brushes. So we have 1 powder brush, we have 1 blush brush, and then we have 3 eyeshadow brushes. Alright, so as you guys can see here, the brushes look very elegant. I love the color that is used throughout the brushes here, from the color of the dyes used on the bristles here all the way down to the color of the handles, and even this very elegant looking black ferrule, which is actually very reflective under the light. Now what makes this brush quite special is actually the dyeing techniques, because this actually uses persimmon dyes to give this very nice dusky color onto the bristles. So it's a very nice warm orangey golden kind of a color, which is actually very pretty and very elegant. And that's also reflected on the color of the handles here. Now the handles is made of cherry wood, so again it's very special, and again it looks very elegant. And I just love the very nice warmth golden color that it invokes. And of course, the black ferrule here just adds to the certain elegance of this brush set. Very pretty brush set, I have to say. So of course, on the brush here, you can see that the Koyudo name is actually carved into the handle. You can actually feel it. The handle is actually very smooth, and of course, depending on the brush, it's actually quite weighty and well balanced, as you guys can see here. Very nice balance. All of the brushes, they're actually very well balanced. So I can actually say that they actually really created this brush set quite well, wherein the weight is actually distributed well across the entire length of the brush, starting from the very tip of the bristle here all the way to the very base of the handle. Very beautiful. Okay, so now let's talk about these brushes one by one, and we'll start with the biggest brush in the collection, which is the powder brush. So this is the KSZ02 brush. This is the powder brush, and as you guys can see here, it's a very fluffy brush. Look at that. Look at the fluff of that brush head. It's actually so beautiful. It has a rounded shape here, nice airiness to it, and it also has a very nice snap back into position. Look at that. It also keeps its shape quite nicely. It's very amazing, and the brush feels very soft on my palms. Again, it feels very, very silky, but I can feel that tips here are actually quite strong because of the dye that is used to add volume into the tips of this Chikuhodo brush head. So again, if I didn't mention it earlier, all of the fibers used in the brush head of the Koyudo Kakishibuzome brush uses Chikuhodo goat hair, okay? Now, I have to say though that even if the brush head is actually quite airy, when I'm just running the brush to the palm of my hand here, I can feel a resistance at the core of the bristles here, so at least we know that this will give this brush a very nice buffing ability, because after all, it's a powder brush, and for sure I know I can use this for bronzer application as well. Now, let's tap the bristle here. So if we press it, you can see that there's some resistance already, and if we press it some more and if we add more pressure, the brush head actually blooms in a rounded shape, which is actually quite nice. So at least we know that the edges are actually able to help you to blend out color effectively and nicely at the same time. Look at that. Can you see the resistance on the brush there? That's actually amazing. I'm actually quite surprised on how luxurious this brush head feels. And also, I know this is going to be a very effective brush to use on the face. Now, in terms of comparison, I don't have a Chikuhodo brush head of this size in my collection. So this is the biggest Chikuhodo brush head that I have. So if I was going to compare this to a brush with a similar shape, so that you guys just can have an idea on how big the brush head actually is, I'm going to get my Chikuhodo F09 brush. So I'm gonna put them side by side here. So as you guys can see, they are very big brush heads. And if we put them side by side here, we can see that the brush heads design are actually very different, especially if we put it on the top here. But in terms of softness and silkiness, of course, because this is an FO brush, this is actually quite silky, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this KSZ2 brush is not silky as well. But it just has more density in comparison of the F09 brush. And of course, the F09 is actually airier because it's actually softer and less dense than the KSZ2 brush that I am holding here right now. So you guys can see, look at that. Both are very soft. This is very minimal pressure. So as you guys can see, the F09 doesn't have a lot of hairs in the core of the belly, that it actually splays out more and faster in comparison to the KSZ2 brush here. Look at that. So if you're someone who likes to have makeup brushes that have more buffing ability, then this is a good brush for you to have. Very beautiful brush. Okay, now the next brush that I have here is the Kakishibuzome KSZ3 brush. So this is the cheek brush. Now this is my second Kakishibuzome cheek brush because I actually bought one a few months ago and I actually fell in love with this brush, and it is actually because of this brush that I became very interested with the Kakishibuzome line from Koyudo. Now as you guys can see here, the personalities of the brushes are very different, because if you've been following Fude for quite some time, you'd know that the difference in the dyeing of the bristles and even the wood grain here is a very typical trademark of handmade makeup brushes in Japan. Now I love this brush because it is a flat and paddle-like design, and it's also a little bit rounded. And as you guys can see here, it's a little bit oval as well. So it's actually great to actually pick up and buff out colors in the cheeks effectively. And because of the dye that is used to add strength into the fibers of the Chikuhodo goat hair, you can actually use this as well for hard pressed blush products, baked gelée products. So again, we have this very nice versatile cheek brush in our hands. Now in terms of brush head design, if I can compare this to, it could be quite similar to the Chikuhodo S110 brush here, because they are both flat and also rounded, but the KSZ3 here flares out more in a much more wider sense in comparison to the S110 brush that we have here from Chikuhodo. We put them up to the top here. We can also see that the KSZ brush is actually more airier than the Chikuhodo S110 brush. So the Chikuhodo S110 brush here will have a much more targeted, application of color, much more precise, while the Koyudo Kakishibuzome KS3 brush here will have a much more, wider, impact of color and also buffing ability. So again, I'm just going to press it here at the palm of my hands. Look how wide that flares out and blooms. And again, we can see the resistance at the core of the brush here. So this gives it this very nice buffing ability. And then the outer bristles here can buff out the colors and help you to blend it out at the same time. So this is the Chikuhodo S110 brush here. So as you guys can see, it doesn't bloom as smoothly as the Kakishibuzome KSZ3 brush here. So this brush, the S110, is actually great to lay down product first and buff it out in a directional manner. Okay, and also I did compare this brush before to the Chikuhodo F03 brush, because if we put them side by side, especially from the bristles here, they almost have the same design wherein they flare out. And they're quite airy at the tips here. But again, the brushes here are very, very different because this is fox and this is Shiseido goat hair. But I'm just putting these side by side so that you guys can have an idea on how big the brush head is of the KSZ03 brush. Okay. Alright, and these are the eyeshadow brushes of the Kakishibuzome series of Koyudo. So this is the KSZ04, so which is the large eyeshadow brush, as you guys can see from the brush head here. This is the KSZ05, which is the medium eyeshadow brush. And this is the KSZ06, which is the small eyeshadow brush, which is like a detailed brush. So if we put these three brushes together, they're actually a very nice collection of eyeshadow brushes that can help you to apply and to blend out eyeshadow. Of course, we have this large eyeshadow brush here, which is perfect to actually lay down and apply color in a directional manner on the eyes. Then we have a much more smaller eyeshadow brush here, which you can use to actually build in color or tap in color, especially if you want to add glitter, let's say in the middle of your eyelid. Perfect size. And then of course, if you want to be very detailed with your eyeshadow application, then the KSZ06 is good for that. So the size of this here is actually quite good to apply soft colors on the lash line, may it be on the upper lash line or in the lower lash line. And there's actually a very nice strength in the belly of this, which is actually for sure will enable you to buff out harsh edges on your eyelashes. And not only that, I think you can also use this to apply detailing work into your crease or your socket line. This is actually quite perfect, and if you have small eyelids, this will be perfect for you as well, because in comparison, this is my Pencil Pro from Sonyoji. So the KSZ6 here is actually smaller than that, and in comparison to the other new brush that was released by Sonyoji, which is the Pencil S here, so it's actually bigger than that. So it's a very nice medium kind of a size that for sure will fit into most eyelids. And in terms of comparisons to other pencil eyeshadow brushes or these types of detailing brushes that I have in my collection, so it's actually much more smaller. So this is my Mizuho detail brush, and this is my Fude Bobo and 90 brush, and this is my Chikuhodo Z something brush. I forgot the number of this, but as you guys can see here, in terms of size of the brush head, the KSZ is actually smaller. So again, if you want more detailed work in your eyes, this is actually perfect for you. Okay. Now the two larger eyeshadow brushes, we have this very typical shape wherein it's flat and rounded, so it's more traditional in a sense of its brush head design, especially if you put it here on the side. You can actually see that it's actually quite full at the belly here, and it tapers into a much more finer point at the tips of the bristles here. And I have to say though that it actually has a nice strength at the core of the brush here, because it doesn't really like, bend out much out of shape. So at least we know that this brush can really help you to really apply and to blend out color, like, on the eyelid. And the brush head actually keeps its shape quite nicely, so it doesn't splay out much, so it doesn't give you that, like, buffing and blending ability that you will get in a buffing and a blending blush. So this is actually a very nice, like, brush that you can use to apply or lay down color into your eyelid. And that goes the same for this KSZ05 brush. So again, like, if I'm just pressing the brush head into my finger here, you can see that it's a very nice core here at the belly. And of course, because this brush head here tapers into a much more finer point, you can also use this brush to, like, apply color in your lower lash line and even in your upper lash line. And we'll try that a little bit later. Now, in terms of comparison, so let's start with the KSZ04 first. Now, it's actually very similar to, like, the worker brushes of Sonia G, but the main difference is that the KSZ04 here doesn't have airy tips here, because it is this tips that actually give a brush, like, a buffing ability. Okay, so you don't expect to get that from here. Now, but I'm just showing you guys here because in terms of size of the brush head, so we can see that the KSZ04 here is just a little bit tad wider in comparison to the worker brushes from Sonia G. But you can still feel, like, there's so much hairs at the core of the belly of the brush here. So it's actually quite strong. And as you guys can see, the main difference when I really press, like, the bristles of the Sonia G worker brushes here, this is the worker M and the worker S. They actually bend out more in comparison of the Chikuhodo KSZ4 brush. Look at that. Okay, let me put this to the side here. Now, for the KSZ05 brush, the brush head design here is actually quite similar to the builder brushes of Sonia G, especially the newer ones. But again, as you guys can see, the main difference is that if we put it to the side, the builder brushes of Sonia G has some airiness at the tips here, again, which enables you to use the brush to buff out color. While this one, again, we have this very typical brush head design wherein you're only able to actually lay product into the eyelid. Okay, so that's it. Now, basically, in doing this activity alone, when you're comparing this, I could actually say that if Koyudo is just going to develop more eyeshadow brushes in their Kakishibuzome line and add more blending brushes, like for example, like let's say their own version of the J146 and the J142 from Chikuhodo, like, these types of blending brushes, I mean, it's actually going to be a much more perfect, like, a very robust brush set. But if we just have all of these 5 brushes with us today, it's a very nice, like, basic brush set that you can have in your collection. And of course, if you're someone who's new to Fude, and, like, if you just want to begin your Fude journey, like, starting with this 5-piece brush set from Koyudo is actually a great gateway into the Fude world. Okay, now I believe that originally the Kakishibuzome brush set of Koyudo came in 6 brushes, and I'm sure you've noticed that because when I started presenting these brushes to you one by one, I started with brush number 2 and then onwards to number 3, 4, 5, and 6. And you might be wondering what happened to brush number KSZ01. Well, I believe Koyudo actually discontinued making that brush. Now, I have seen a picture of that before, so I'm going to flash it here. And the brush head design of that is actually, like, flat and round, and it might be similar to the Kakishibuzome KSZ03 brush, or the cheek brush. So it might have been like this, but the brush head might have been bigger, maybe the same size as the KSZ02, or maybe a little bit smaller. I don't know. I've only seen that in pictures, so if I can find a video of someone doing a demo and a review for that brush, I'm going to put a link down on the description box, okay? Now, I don't know if the KSZ01 brush is going to come back into production sometime into the future. I think it depends. If there's a clamor for that brush, maybe they might bring it back. And truthfully, now I am clamoring for the KSD01 brush, because now that I know that there was actually a KSD01 brush, I actually want to have one so that I can complete the set. But I don't know what the future holds for the Kakishibuzome series, but I am hoping that we'll be surprised sometime soon. Okay. Now the other thing, by the way, that I found out is that the Kakishibuzome series from Koyudo actually won an award. So they won the 2023 Traditional Crafts Exhibition Buyer Award. Isn't it amazing? So this award is actually given to a traditional craft which actually incorporates new and modern ideas into traditional skills and techniques. So isn't that amazing? Because after all, fude is a traditional craft, and also the dyeing technique used in giving this dusky color is also a traditional craft. So the technique here, I believe, has been used as early as the Heian period. Now the Heian period in Japan was around the 700s to the 1100s, so it's been around for that long. And to use something as traditional as that and incorporate it into something as modern as a makeup brush is actually so amazing. So I'm so glad for them that they got this award. So congratulations again, Koyudo, for that. Okay, so right now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put on some makeup, foundation and concealer, and of course it's about time that we'll be playing with these brushes. Okay, so I have some foundation and concealer down. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set my under eye area, and I'm going to get my Koyudo Fupa 14 ENA brush, and I'm just going to set my under eye area with the Givenchy Prism Leaf powder. And the reason why I'm using this brush right now is because most of the brushes that I have here from the Kakishibuzome series are just way too big to use in the under eye area. Okay, so right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the rest of my face, and I'm going to be using this very fluffy and very luxurious looking Kakishibuzome KSZ02 brush. It looks so pretty. Look at that. It's so big. It covers my entire eye. Even my eye socket. It's such a very nice fluffy brush. So that's what I was so attracted to when I first saw this brush. Okay, so what I'm going to be using is some translucent powder first, and I just have a substantial amount of it here on the cap. So I'm just going to put the brush here on the cap. I'm going to twirl it around, and I'm going to try to pick up an even amount of powder, and that's what we have here. And let me just brush it all over. Now, even if this brush actually feels kind of strong, I actually don't see it disturbing, the camouflage that I applied here on my, disrespectful blemish that I got when I was in Tokyo. So I'm actually quite grateful for that. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm just being very careful anyway when I'm picking up the powder, because I know that this brush is going to pick up a ton of product, especially if I'm very heavy-handed with it. So again, when I'm just running the brush here through my face, I don't feel any prickling sensation at all, and it dances quite nicely, so amazingly, and it feels so luxurious. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to see how well this will actually pick up powder foundation. So I have here my NC35 foundation from a foundation powder from MAC, and I'm just gonna twirl the brush head here on the pan, and as you guys can see, it actually picked up a substantial amount of product. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of the powder here in the area where it wasn't able to pick up because it was seated on the base of the pan. Okay, that's great. And I'm just gonna lightly buff this all over my face. And I can already instantly see that it's actually giving my skin additional coverage, but it's not too much, which is actually great. But it's actually just picking up the right amount of powder foundation. Now I like that when a brush does that, because I know that it doesn't give me a very cakey looking face instantly, and I'm also able to layer the product nicely, because after all, when you're using like, powder foundation, using light layers is always the key, and this brush really helps me with that. So as you guys can see, there's already enough coverage. I'm also looking to be a little bit matte already, but it doesn't look cakey at all. And of course, it's not disturbing the foundation that I applied earlier. Because again, like, it's very fluffy and airy, but it's also quite dense. So it's actually able to also blend it out and to sheer it out at the same time. I love this brush. Feels so good on the skin, I swear. So good. Okay, so now what I want to do is maybe let's use more loose powder types of products, and I just want to add some dimension, and I'm gonna get my Givenchy Prism Libre powder, which I don't have in my table, so let me go get it. Okay, so here it is, and this is my Givenchy Prism Libre in what's this, number 5 Popeline Mimosa. Now I actually love this powder, especially if I just want to add a nice veil or like a hint of color on my face. So let me just mix these colors together, especially if I just want to add some very nice hint of warmth, and it looks to be a little bit diffused. So I love this shade for that. Okay, and when I'm happy with the mixture here, let me pick up some of the powder with this KSD02 brush, and let me apply it in a bronzer kind of a manner. And I'm sure you guys can see already the very nice soft color that this powder has applied on my face. And I'm sure you guys can see how well this brush is actually also blending it out and even enhancing that softness. Now I believe this is going to be my go-to brush for loose powder application on the face. So now I'm just going to apply a little bit of the powder here on my forehead for a very nice soft dimension of color. And I'm going to blend it into my cheekbones and even here into my jawline. Because the brush head is so big and fluffy, I'm actually able to blend out and apply colors in no time. It's actually amazing. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to use this brush for bronzer application, which I'm sure is going to work fantastically. So I have my NARS Laguna bronzer here. So this is in a pressed bronzer kind of a formula. And I'm sure this brush is going to work amazing with this bronzer. Look at that. Look how soft this brush head applies color. It's already giving my skin this very nice warmth. And also contouring me at the same time, so in a bronzer kind of a way. So if you're someone who likes to apply your bronzer this way, fast and no-brainer, you don't have to be very precise with it, this brush can really help you achieve that. It's actually quite lovely. I like that. This is the type of makeup application that I like, soft and thin layers. Fantastic. Look at that. So my skin now has some life in it, which I actually love. Okay, so now let's move on to blush, and let us apply some pink blush. So of course, pink goes very well with my skin tone, and I'm just gonna pour some of this blush into the cap here, and I'm gonna be using the KSZ03 brush. And I'm just going to be picking up a nice amount of color here. Very well. I'm going to dust a little bit of it at the back of my hand. And I'm going to lightly apply it here on my cheeks. Now what I love about the KSZ3 brush is that it's actually able to buff out the color instantly and make it appear softer. So I'm adding more here on my other cheek. And I'm just pressing it. Again, when I'm just doing that, the edges of the bristles here are already blending out the colors for me. So if you are someone who likes to have blush applications like this, wherein it's quite light, and you like using loose powder products, this brush is a perfect pairing for that. Okay, so now I'm just playing around, and let's add some more color into the cheeks, maybe add some intensity. So of course, let's pick up maybe this very well-loved Orgasm Blush from NARS. I'm just patting the brush head into the pan here. Okay, so I have seen like the intensity has already gone up a notch, and it's also blending out the two colors quite nicely as well. Look at that. These brushes are so wonderful. They apply colors nicely and they also blend it out nicely at the same time. Okay, so that's how the face brushes from the Kakishibuzome series of Koyudo apply powder products onto my face. Quite lovely, don't you think? Alright, so right now let's move on to eyes. Okay, so I have now the KSD04 brush. Am I right? Yeah, so this is the big eyeshadow brush here. And I'm just going to be picking up this eyeshadow color. So this is from Laura Mercier, and this is called African Violet. This is one of my most favorite colors. And look at that. Look how much product this brush head actually picks up. So let me just remove a little bit of that here at the back of my hand. Oh, but I have to say though that the way that this brush head actually holds onto pigment is actually quite amazing, I have to say. Okay, so I'm just gonna apply this as a one wash of color all over my eyelid. Look at that. So it's actually delivering a very nice even amount of color, and I'm also able to actually apply it in a quite directional manner, which is actually great. And I'm actually also able to blend it out at the same time. Look how nice and soft that color application is. Actually very beautiful and very pretty. It's quite nice. And let me just blend out the edges here on my crease and socket line. Look at that. That was very easy and that was quite fast. Amazing. Okay, so let me try that here on my other eye. So I'm just patting it to build more intensity. And then I'm just going to be dragging it out in a directional manner, making sure that I create a lift in my eye. And then what I'm going to do is between my socket and my crease, I'm just going to apply the brush and try to blend it into my socket line. Okay, so if you're someone who likes to do one and done eyeshadow looks, this brush can be very helpful for you. And mind you, the formula of this eyeshadow color is a shimmery type of a formula. So it actually feels kind of creamy also at the same time. Okay, so now I have the KSZ05 brush, and I'm going to be picking up the same color here. But I'm just concentrating, picking up the color at the tips of the brush head here. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of that here in my lower lash line area. Concentrating the color in the outer corners here and dragging it well into the inner corners. And let me just create a lift by dragging the color up and blending it into my socket line and upper eyelids. And let me also do that here on my other eye. Now I do have to say though that the bristles of the Kakishibuzome eyeshadow brushes are actually very comfortable to use on the sensitive parts of your eyes. Now because after all this is made of Chikuhodo goat hair, which is actually amazing, and even if it's dyed, it actually still feels very comfortable. It's actually so amazing. And then what I want to do now is I just want to add some glittery eyeshadow, so a nice topper color. So I'm gonna get this shade from the Myth palette of Lisa Eldridge, and I'm using the KSZ05 brush, and I'm just gonna add this on top of the middle of my eyelid here, so that we have more drama and glitter. Amazing! I love how this brush picks up glittery eyeshadow, and I'm actually quite surprised on how well the eyeshadow brushes actually hold onto the pigments, that I don't actually see any fallout on my upper cheeks, which is actually amazing. It's actually great. Okay, and let me get the detail brush, or the smallest eyeshadow brush in this collection, and I'm just using the same glittery shade here, and I'm gonna apply that here on the inner corners and drag it out here into my lower lash line. And also doing that here on the other eyes. Again, I'm just tapping it and I don't feel any uncomfortable sensation at all. It feels very light, but I can feel its density as well, so I'm so glad about that. Okay, that's quite great. So I have this very nice soft wash of color on my eyes, and I was actually able to apply it in no time. Amazing, amazing, I love that. I'm actually very surprised right now on how well these eyeshadow brushes are actually working with me today. Okay, so let's intensify the eye look a little bit and play with more colors. So let me get this, like, very nice deep bluish purplish color, and I'm just loading the tips of this KSD06 brush here. And this is what I'm going to use to apply color on my upper lash line. Oh, as you guys can see, it's actually delivering a very nice soft color, nothing too stark. And of course, I'm just adjusting in the way that I hold the brush here. So if I want a much more thicker line, I press the brush head more into my lash line. And then if I want to have a thinner lash line, I kind of lift my hand a little bit, keeping it as far from my lashes as possible, but making sure that I'm actually able to land the very tips of the middle of the brush here into my eyes, so that it just gives me a very nice thin layer of color. Look at that. I'm actually so surprised that this brush is actually able to do this for me today. And again, I'm not seeing any fallout. Amazing. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to add some here on my other eye right now. So I actually want to intensify my lash line a bit, so I'm going to be getting the KSD05 brush, and I'm going to be picking up the same color here, loading the tips of the bristles and picking up maybe a little bit of this darker shade here. And this is what I'm going to use to press into my upper lash line to build more intensity and to add more depth and color. And I'm actually quite surprised, and I'm actually able to apply color here into my inner corners, also in a very nice thin manner. Love that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to buff out the edges and try to create a lift just to smoke out the edges a little bit. And now that I'm doing that, again, I don't feel any prickling sensation at all. It still feels very comfortable. And even though if there's density in the bristles here, it still feels comfortable, because sometimes if a brush is very dense and then you're buffing it, you can actually feel the brush exert pressure on your eyeballs. And I don't feel that with this brush. Even with the other eyeshadow brushes from this series, it feels very comfortable in the eyes. Okay, look at that. And maybe if I just want to be playful a little bit, let me pick up a little bit of this color here and a little bit of this, and let me just add a little bit of that here into my socket line, just so that we have a nice depth of color here, because that will also help with my shape and create a lift for my eye. Nice soft color, I like that. I'm sure if I add more color and if I add more pressure, I am going to increase the intensity of this eyeshadow application, but I actually don't want that. I actually love all the softness that I'm seeing right now. Okay, and then let me get the KSD04 brush. Yes, and then I'm just going to blend out the edges and keep it light and soft. Look at that, very pretty. I think I want to add some mascara. Hang on. So that kind of completes the look. I love how soft my eye looks today, but there's also a very nice soft definition. And I love how these eyeshadow brushes actually worked with me today. I love it. Look at that. Very nice and very simple. And with just 3 eyeshadow brushes, you can actually create this very nice, soft look. And I'm sure if you increase intensity with the like eyeshadow colors that you use, you can just intensify this. I love it. So I'm just hoping that in the future they add more like brushes into the Kakishibuzome series, especially with like eyeshadow brushes, like blending brushes or crease brushes. That would actually be perfect. But again, like I'm so surprised that with these three brushes alone I was able to create this eye look with me today. So yeah, so I believe that's it. Do I have everything? Have I tried everything? One more. So let me try and use this, like, nice shimmery block of shimmer from Laura Mercier. And I'm going to use this brush and apply some color as a topper because I think this color will work well with the eyeshadow look that we have. Alright, so I believe we have come to the end of my vlog for today. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed me showing you how I actually use my Koyudo Kakishibuzome brushes. And I hope that you guys can see on how I absolutely love them. Like, I just love the way that they apply and deliver color on the face or even on the eyes. And on how well they actually, like, blend them out, like, seamlessly. Super amazing. Now, although I actually showcased to you this as a set, but you can actually purchase this individually at Fude Beauty. So if you only want to purchase the eyeshadow brushes, you can do so, and if you only want to purchase any of the face brushes, you can actually also do so. But mind you, this is actually a perfect gift idea, like the entire set, because after all, it is already the Christmas season, so you can gift this to that very special person in your life, like maybe if they're just a makeup lover, or if they're like celebrating a milestone birthday. This is actually a great set to also give out. Alright, so that's it from me today. So if you have any more questions about all of the products that I used today, or any more questions with the Koyudo Kakishibuzome brushes, please let me know down in the comments box and let's have a conversation about it. Alright, so I'm going to let you guys go now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye bye. And PS, one more thing I forgot, let's see how well the KSZ06 will actually blur out or buff out eyeliner pencils on the lash line. So I have here an eyeliner pencil from Wayne Goss, and I'm just going to apply it here on my upper lash line, close to my lashes. A very nice, like, very moody violety shade. Okay, so I have it all in now, and now let's get the KSZ06 brush and let us try to see if this will actually buff out our eyeliner. Okay, so the Kakishibuzome KS06 brush is actually strong enough to buff out eyeliner pencils on our lash line, which is fantastic. Okay, so that's it. So let me finish my other eye now, and I see you in a future video. Okay, bye.